Everybody, it's Brett, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Stack, where today I am sitting down with Florida's own Kristen Arnett to talk about her new book, Stop Me If You've Heard This One. A little bit about Kristen. She is the queer Floridian author of With Teeth, a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award in Fiction, and the New York Times bestselling debut novel, Mostly Dead Things, which was also a finalist for the Lambda Literary Award in Fiction. She was awarded a Shearing Fellowship at Black Mountain Institute, has held residencies at Ragdale Foundation, Vermont Studio Center, the Malay Colony, and the Studios of Key West, and was long listed for the Joyce Carol Oates Prize. She runs the substack Dad Lessons. Her work has appeared in the New York Times, Time, Vogue, The Cut, Oprah Magazine, PBS NewsHour, The Guardian, Salon, The Washington Post, and elsewhere. She's a master's in library and information science from Florida State University, and she lives in Orlando, Florida. And now, enjoy this episode of Behind the Stack. Okay, I have my coffee. I'm good to go. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I was talking about your book on my YouTube page a few weeks ago because I had just started it, and I was talking about things I was reading for February. And you were so interesting to me because I have a feeling that so many people feel like they know you probably without actually knowing you. You have one of those kind of personalities. And I was saying on my YouTube, I was like, I have never talked to you. I've never met you. I've never even interacted with you on social media. And yet I was like, but I feel like we would be friends.
I love that. I feel like we'd be friends. We're friends now.
I mean, I feel like you're kind of one of those people that probably engender that in other people. They probably are like, oh my God, like you're one of those people like who everyone said, well, actually, she's my best friend. Also, because it's like, I loved in your afterwards, you're like, I have so many friends, and you listen. I loved that so much. So anyway, so there's no pressure at all, but I just needed to tell you that.
Yeah, that's so nice. That's really nice. Thank you.
All right. So anyway, all that to say, I'm thrilled that you're here. I really loved your book, but it's so terrific. Both your covers are so much fun. The UK cover is great as well. They're really wonderful covers. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about you for a moment before we actually got into the book. So you were born in Florida, right? You were born and bred,
Yeah, I'm
correct?
third generation Central Florida, actually. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So, and then you grew up in quite an evangelical home, correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah. My family is like a Southern Baptist, so it's a
Yeah.
very specific kind of like conservative evangelical upbringing for sure. Yeah.
Did you have siblings?
I'm the oldest of three. So it's myself and then my brother, who's 2 years younger than me, and my sister, who's like 8.5 years younger than me.
Okay. Now, I know you're estranged, I think, from your parents, but do you have a relationship with your siblings?
I have a relationship with my sister, actually. She's also queer. She just got married. I think she's saying queer now. First she was saying bisexual. She just got married. I love her partner. He's so lovely. We hosted her reception in our backyard here at my house, and it was actually really nice because growing up, we like 8.5 years is kind of like a gap, and I had a
Yeah.
room with her growing up. So it's like we were not the closest growing up, but now that we're adults, it's been nice because yeah, she's basically the only person I have contact with from my family.
So then jumping ahead, you had a son, and so you were working as a librarian, right, to support yourself and make ends meet. So tell me about that, and moving from that, how did the writing start?
Yeah, I mean, the writing like has was always kind of happening in the background. I think I just never considered myself to be a writer. I think I do that
Mm.
thing that like plenty of us do, where we have enough going on in our lives and then we are like, oh well, I don't feel like I deserve to call myself a writer. So I was, but I also was very busy. I had my son. I was working full time. I was started going to school at night. So I always say like I had a very like non-traditional kind of like path through education, and that's something I really like to talk about when I'm talking about writing, especially with young writers, because I think there's this idea that like there's one single path to like be a creative person, and that's obviously not the case, because it definitely wasn't the case for me. I was going to school at night and then I was writing in my free time, which was very small amounts of free time. So I was writing early in the morning when I'd get up and have to like open the library, or
Mm.
in like pockets of time, like at night when like my son was asleep and I would be still kind of buzzing from a very full day. And also stressed out because I had no money and being scared about finances. So, like, those things are like, I feel like I was so productive in those years. I kind of look like back on it now and I'm like, anytime I'm like, I feel like I'm busy, quote unquote, now I'm like, well, are you really that busy? Because think about all the things you used to have to do all the time. Um, but yeah, it was like one of those things where I was like, I'm just going to do it. So I did my undergrad that way. And then I was like, I'm going to go ahead and do my master's in library science the same kind of way at night. So I
Mm.
was still like working in the library. I was also then I was really starting to like I was writing essays. I was applying for workshops because I was like, I can't do an MFA. I was like, this isn't like, that was one of the choices I made where I was like, after I finished my undergrad, I was like, really wanted to maybe do an MFA. And I was like, this isn't financially responsible to do with a child. Like, I was like, I can't,
Yeah.
I didn't want to uproot him. I was always very serious about wanting to make sure that he had everything he needed and that I wanted him to stay in the same school and keep the same friends. Like, it was very important for me to feel like I was providing him with a sense of stability. So I was like, I can't like root him and like drag him to like some program I'm going to like somewhere. Like, that's ridiculous. So I was like, okay, I can't do that. But what can I do so that I feel like I'm getting that kind of like writing assistance and like support that I need? And one of the things I was like, well, I can like DIY anything. Like, I'm from Orlando.
Mm.
Like, I'm like, I can do anything I need to do. So I was like, okay, I'm going to really start working. I'm going to have like a daily kind of ritual of reading and writing. I'm going to start applying for these workshops. So I applied for Lambda, which is like the LGBTQ plus
Mm.
workshop, and I got into that workshop. And I remember being like literally flabbergasted. Like, I was like, I have published nothing, I don't have anything. And I got to that workshop and it was a literal life changer. I met like the faculty, but also it was like the first time I've been around so many different kinds of queer people who were all creative
Mm.
and making work. I left that workshop with like lifelong friendships. Like, Tommy Pico was there when I was there and he officiated my wedding this last year. Like, there's just like people that are in my life like forever now that I made that are like writer friends. And I was like, oh, it's so enriching to like, I don't need to have an MFA. I think there's like absolutely nothing wrong. Like, it's great to get an MFA, but I was like, I couldn't do it. But I was like, I can have these things and they're going to serve in the same kind of way where I'm getting the support and the kind of camaraderie and the like the sharing of like work, and that stuff was so important to me. So I started doing that. I applied every year, and I very luckily like every summer after that got into a workshop. So I would like take my time from work where I'd have these like 2 weeks saved up, and I'm like, okay, I'm taking this 1 week and I'm going to a workshop and I'm gonna like
Mm.
really, really. I went to Tin House after that, and I was like, I'm treating this like really like boot camp MFA. I went to every lecture. I wrote notes. I went to like every time I was in a workshop, I took notes. I was like, I'm going to treat this like so seriously. And then after I would leave, I'd have this like huge spurt of creativity where I'd just be like working nonstop because it felt like I was so like full up, like full to the brim of like lots of good things. So I went from there, like at Tin House, that's where I found my agent. They have these agent meet and greets, and I ended up meeting an agent that was right for me. And then Tin House ended up publishing my first novel too. So it's just kind of all built from these spaces where I was like, I'm going to make opportunities happen, even if I feel like I like opportunities can come in any kind of form. So it doesn't have to be this like I went to an MFA and I had a faculty and I had like a cohort. It can be like I'm going to a workshop and I'm going to find an agent and I'm going to make it happen and I'm going to write the whole time. So I just was like busting ass constantly.
So most of these workshops, because being not familiar with them, they last a week or 2 weeks. Is that how they normally go?
Yeah, and some of them are different too. So I did like the ones I ended up doing where I did Lambda, which was wonderful. I did Tin House like 3 years in a row. I also did Kenyon Writers Workshop. And the Lambda and Tin House are those are interesting in that like you show up with work that gets workshopped that you've already written.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking for feedback, and so you sit with like your group that's there in your workshop, and everybody kind of gives you feedback, or you get help from like not only the instructor but from other people in the workshop. And then they have like adjacent things going on. Like, there's panels with like different writers who are there. There's lectures from different authors. There's editors things. So if you're looking to maybe submit to journals or you're trying to get work published, like an essay or a short story, you can hear from editors. Like, it's a lot of like information that is hard to find if you're on your own. But Kenyon is a workshop that's like incredibly generative. So like that was like a great workshop for me. It's actually where I started the genesis of my first novel, Mostly Dead Things, was I was at that generative workshop where every day we were writing something new inside of a workshop space. And I was like, this is incredible. I love it. We get kind of prompts from our workshop leader, and then like we'd go and we'd work, and we'd also get like kind of craft intensives with talking about like perspective and narrative arc and like different things like that. And I was like, this is all stuff that's so cool that I've just been like kind of just fumbling around with or feeling out on my own. And so to hear like, here's like the process, or here's like some reading, extra reading you can do to like figure out more if you're like interested in this, or like how you can like fiddle around with like structure inside of like short fiction or essays or poetry. It's like these are all usually like around a week. And some of them cost money. Some of them you can get like scholarships too, which they're like few and far between. I would save up like every year any of like my fund money, or like not that I had that much, God. Um, but like if I got like any money back for like taxes when I had to do my horrible taxes every year, that money was like literally earmarked for like, I was like, okay, this is like, I'm gonna take my days off. I'm gonna like take this money and I'm gonna go to workshop, because I was like, I'm taking this as seriously like it's a heart attack. I was like, I'm gonna be so serious about this. And it was like a thing where it's like I also just got so much joy from it. So some of it too, I asked myself, like, even if like this doesn't result in an agent or it doesn't result in a book deal, is this meaningful for me? And the answer to that was like absolutely yes, because I felt like the best version of myself being a writer and like being surrounded by other creatives and talking about work and talking about books and talking about like structure and craft. And it was just like the most fun. And I was like, so this is obviously what I'm supposed to be doing. I mean, which is
That's
not
amazing.
away from library work, because I love library work too. Those are just like two disparate things that also manage to touch each other.
Well, it's like you're filling your tank, you know? You're so filling that side of yourself. All right. So for your latest book, do you have an elevator pitch?
Oh, I think it's like one of those things where I'm like, because right away it's like it's a very specific kind of story. I'm like lesbian, like fuckboy birthday party clown in Central Florida, like makes friends with a much older magician in order to like advance her career, and like erotic hijinks ensue, and like a lot of discovery about like art, capitalism, and like the culture of living inside of Central Florida.
That was great. Fuckboy clown. That was my favorite. Okay, so wait, we have to go. Where did this idea come from you? What was the genesis? Where did Cherry come from?
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where the process for writing this book, like I took more time to think about it than I did to actually write it. Like the writing of this book was very fast, but I truly thought about the concept for a whole year, because I was like, I don't want to fuck this up. Like this is such an
Mm.
important project to me. Sometimes I feel like for myself, I know when something's a novel because it feels so big, my brain barely wants to touch it or hold it. I'm like, oh, that's an exciting idea. Like, that's an exciting idea. It was like that for Mostly Dead Things. It was like that for my second novel with Teeth, which was this, I got this idea of like a thwarted child abduction. And I was like, oh, this is exciting to start from. For this one with a clown, I was like, funny birthday party clown. And some of it too is like the book is like not about me. I mean, I had so much fun writing it. I think a lot of the humor or ideas about like humor and comedy like that are in there, like something like that come from questions I've thought about before, like in
Mm.
the past. And also too, like I get a lot, because you're right, like when you said earlier, like people follow me on social media and have like maybe an idea about who I am, or like, and I also think too, like I'm pretty upfront about who I am. So kind of what you see is what you get. Like I am like
Mm.
who I am on the internet. But like I've had people before like read my work and be like, oh, I thought this would be funny. Like you're so funny online. Like you guys make a joke. And then I'm like kind of like, do you think like 300-page book is going to be like a 140 character tweet? Like is that like you're like equating those things too? But it's like also too, and so I kind of was like, haha, well, if you want a clown, I'll give you a clown. I'll go give you something funny. And then it kind of became a thing where I was like, oh, I want to write a really, really funny book. And it started to take shape in my mind. And I'm like, okay, a clown. Like, right? Like somebody who's going to perform for a captive audience, somebody who's like their sole purpose is to like entertain in this kind of way or do
Mm.
performance. And it's also kind of drag. So there's a lot happening here where the more I thought about it, the more I was like, this is really interesting to me. It also is like, I'm from Central Florida and I'm always trying to write about Central Florida. And I was like, so much of like what people think about where I live is like it's a place where people travel to, but then they like as a tourist destination, but they also think it's tacky. So they have like preconceived ideas about like what counts as art there, right? Like so like people love to come to Orlando and be like, "Oh, I've been to Orlando." I'm like, "No, you went to Disney World. Like you didn't come
Yeah.
to this place." And also now you have like ideas about what you think art is from being here. Like you think that you have an understanding. So I'm like the clown for me became a way to kind of be like hierarchies in terms of like because even in performance culture there's ideas about like what counts as like good art versus bad art, and so I was like this is very
Sure.
exciting to me to think about. And then the shape kind of organically came to me as I was like beginning to think about it a little because I don't outline. That gets really boring for me, and I've discovered that if I sit down and try and act like I'm going to outline, then I'll when I sit down to write, I'll go in the complete opposite direction because I'm like, no, I'm not doing that now. So it eventually became each chapter was kind of its own bit, like its own joke.
Mm.
And these jokes all sit together to form like maybe a set. And so like this is like the clown set for the most part, except for that like chapter in the middle that's like the magician's act. Because I was like, that needs to be its own structure. That needs to be like the magician's voice. But it truly became like, this is going to be about like, what's the cost of making art? Like, what's the cost of making art? And especially art that people like you think is really important that like fuels you, but other people maybe don't value or have a preconceived idea about like what that art is that you're actually trying to make. And maybe it's like looking down on it. So it turned into like a something where I was like, this is very much a Central Florida book. It's a very Orlando book. And it's very much about the entertainment industry inside of Central Florida. And it also was just like so much fun to write. Like every day I sat down to like work on that book was a genuine pleasure. It's the most fun I've ever had working on a project. When I got and I wrote it so quickly, I sat down and it took me over a year to think about it, but when I sat down to write it, I got it done in like 3.5 months. I wrote that draft,
Wow.
and the draft as it is pretty much the book. Like it's pretty much
Wow.
how I wrote it. And I felt as I let it like steep long enough in my brain, maybe it
Yeah.
sit there and I got to think about it, and it worked.
And when you begin to formulate this idea of this clown and who she was and what type of clown, I'm just so curious. Were there people that you talked to in terms of your research? How did you do, or did people emerge that you're like, okay, this is closer to what I see her as versus this? Because it's also to be a party clown is so specific as well. I mean, there's such an interesting thing to me about somebody who is in this point of her life where she's 28 years old, trying to figure it together. A lot of things could seem seemingly like shit. And then you're also having to go and get it up for a bunch of kids and make balloon animals. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. So I knew right away that this was the kind of clown that I wanted her to be. I'll also be completely honest. My favorite thing about doing research is whenever I get into research and I discover there's a lot more beneath the surface, like maybe like an iceberg, like where I think it's this one thing at the top, but then when I go below, I'm like, oh, there's a lot more here. And so researching clowns and clowning was a lot like this because I was like, I thought I had an idea about, because I was like, I'm doing birthday party clown, I'm doing like this kind of specific clowning. But then I was like, the more I did research, because I was like, I want her to be a professional, at least in her own mind, that she's a
Sure.
professional. So I was like, she's going to know a lot about like the mechanics of humor, the aspects of like physical comedy. I want her to like have a grasp of like history of clowning. It's one of those things too, where it's like, maybe that doesn't necessarily have to come out verbatim, her saying something on the page, but I want to do enough research that like it feels embedded into her. So if I do need to give like one little sentence, like I did like history of clowning and like different kinds of clowning. There was so much to dig into. I had to stop myself because I think that's something that writers do also, where it's like we will start like doing research to the detriment of actually sitting down and like typing out the work. So I was like, okay, I can't like
Your wormhole, your clown wormhole.
yeah, exactly. So I was like, okay, I've got to like, so I spent like a lot of time watching a lot of videos because so much of it is like, this is an extremely physical book because a lot of clowning is like physical act.
Mm.
So I was like, I want to see like how bodies move, like how clowns move when they're performing. I want to see like application of grease paint. I want to see like tutorial videos. And like, I watched a lot of tutorial videos on like the art of the pratfall. So
Well,
like, yeah, so you'd get these like clowns who like without their makeup on, like sitting and talking about like, and here's like why this is important or how you would do this and like why the movement of the body here. And they're describing it in this kind of way where it's almost like a physics lesson. And also like here's like why it's might be funny for an audience, and here's like what you can do so you don't hurt yourself. So it's like actually this kind of thing.
mm.
And then that same person would have on their gear and then perform like the pratfall. So I was like, that's two kind of sides. I was like, this is fascinating. So I spent
Oh,
a lot of time watching things because I was like, most of the clowns that I watched in these kinds of videos were like, I was like, I want performance party clowns because that's the kind of clown that she like wants to be. But then I also started looking at like, right, I looked at like adjacent, like kind of circus clowns because there's like a lot of similarities in touch between them. Like one talks and one doesn't, right? You've got like one has a voice and is a very specific, and one is like right about this a little in the book, but like one's like kind of like group based, right? Like the clown car
yeah.
idea, and like they're all kind of touching and like tangential to each other. So I was like watching that and I'm like, okay, what's the difference between these and like who I want to write? And then I also kind of was like Cherry's like, I'm not a stand-up comedian, but I think in her head she kind of is. Like she's her own best audience. So
Yeah, well, that's what the interesting thing was. I was finding so many comparisons too, and I was almost going to ask you that, like when you were doing in construction, there was a point that I was like, it's so interesting. Like, I wonder why she chose clowning versus stand up because there's such a parallel, and in terms of that, trying to be funny, but also so many stand ups are just so miserable by
yeah,
nature, which is what they're pulling on, frankly, to do their material. And we forget, you watch them on stage and you're like, oh my God, they're so funny and they're so sharp and they're so quick. And at the same time, they've got disastrous personal lives and they're just miserable people. And
yeah,
admittedly, they'll tell you that.
yeah,
So, and she's not a miserable person by any stretch of the imagination. Cherry, to me, she's thriving. She's trying very hard
yeah.
to do the best she can in the circumstances that she's in. You know what I mean?
Yes. I also think too, it was really important to me because I think that right, that's a great question. I think in her own mind, she's the funniest person in the room all the time. And I was like, but so much of clowning for her is like putting on a persona. So like
Yeah,
she gets to be funny, but not herself. So she doesn't have to like be like, here's personal information about me in order to be funny. 'Cause I
right.
think she's really guarded with like the kind of stuff that's happened with her mom and like things with her brother. And so like being a clown means she gets to be funny, but people don't get to have access to like who she actually is as a person. And that's like a line that happens because stand up uses a lot of right like personal like lived
Sure.
experience.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, and I also do because she does. She has a very complicated relationship with her mother, who is also a lesbian, which was this whole thing was so fascinating. And of course, I'm not going to get into any spoilers of the book, but there is this element I kept thinking about because she's lost her brother. Her brother has died, who was kind of the light of her mother's life and also the kind of naturally the center of attention, naturally really funny.
Yeah.
So I kept thinking, how much is she really trying to get through her mother's indifference, really striving to be seen by her mother,
Yeah.
who refuses to even call her Cherry, right? She calls her Cheryl,
Yeah.
her given name. So I kept thinking, and how many people who are performers are really trying to be seen in one capacity or another?
Yeah. I
I
mean, I
think
think
it's
you're
really,
right. I think that's a lot of it can be a lot of like performance and stuff too. And I wanted to because it's a fine like because it's a first person, right? This book works like best in my opinion as a very voicey first person, like somebody next to you telling you like a joke, like right to you. So I really wanted her to be very first person, but that means sometimes that you are allowed to be like, what does Cherry understand about herself and what does she not see, right? Like what is she like able to like
Mhm, mhm.
what kind of information does she actually like is she willing to like engage with and what stuff will she not let herself like think about and some of that stuff is her for myself was thinking about her relationship with her mother like how much does she is she willing to admit to herself about like what she does for a living and how like her relationship with her mother has maybe informed some of the choices that she's made.
Sure.
Right. So I was like, I mean, that's always fun for me because I love like the unreliability a little bit, like just a touch of unreliability of being like, because that's so human to me. Like we all have these like reasonings and thoughts about like why we choose to do things. And it's possible that a lot of the time, like the things we're telling ourselves aren't necessarily 100% of like why we make any kind of choice because, we're not like, uh, we're not able to like see with any kind of like level of clarity because we are biased in our own particular like lived experience.
Sure. And also just, let's be honest, the career to say, well, I'm a clown. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just lead with that. Because even and even for people to say, well, I'm an actor, it's immediately like, what have I seen you in? But if you say I'm a clown, what that does and what that says, that alone is funny right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And because inevitably you see the reaction of every person trying to be like, Great. So where? Like, where? Like, are you a member of a circus?
Yeah. I do think it's really funny. And then it became a thing because that was so funny to me, like sitting and like being like, how does this fit inside of like a novel, right? Like, how can this be used as like kind of like a narrative tool moving through here? Like,
Mm.
what would it be like, right? Like going through life and being like, this is my art. I care about it very much. And then like be dating, be meeting friends, trying to get work, and then having to like have conversations about like this, the clown in the corner of the room. You're like, this is who I am and this is what I do. And then also it became a very fascinating thing to me because like clown in popular culture is like divisive, right? Like I had to be so careful. Like people have real phobias about clown.
Huge.
And so, and for like good reason, like Stephen King, I'm a Stephen King reader. So I'm just like, I know this, like the zeitgeist of like the clown and it, and like, how clowns sit in horror. Like if you, like a Spirit Halloween store you go, and probably the first thing that's going to scream at you is some kind of clown
Right. With
situation.
big teeth.
So I was like, okay, like what does it mean then to be like really wanting to do something where you want to entertain people, you think it's funny and it's your art, and like it is such a trigger for some people that they run screaming from a room or like perhaps like react violently towards you. And I was like, okay, this is like something that can sit in here too. So it was really interesting to like kind of delve into that and think about it.
Well, it's funny because I Googled day before yesterday. I was just looking. I was like clowns in Florida because I was like expecting this whole thing, and the first thing that comes up is that creepy story about that man who was going around Florida. Like the clown would just stand there, I think, with the balloon.
Yep.
And I remember when that came out, and I was like, and I'm not usually freaked out by clowns, but that one, and I think they even did a documentary about
They
it.
do.
Yeah, but I was like, well, here we go. This all tracks, like all of it. Which brings me, like, I got to veer off her for a moment because I have to talk about your setting, okay? Because I have to say, Florida. Um, and I was almost thinking, I was like, Kristen, if I was thinking about, if I said to you, I'm thinking about maybe moving to Florida, what would your pitch be?
Oh,
Because,
yeah.
and bearing in mind, like, as a queer person, and maybe as a like, I have a family, but what would you say, like,
Yeah.
the reasons for it? Because you're a huge advocate for your state.
Yes. I always like to say like I'm like unofficial brand ambassador,
Yeah.
especially for Central Florida. I'm like the welcoming committee. Like maybe if you like show up at the airport, there I am, like ready to take you off somewhere. I think that like first of all, specifically Central Florida is way more queer than people think.
Mm.
One of those things is that we're a hospitality hub. Like we're a tourist destination for a lot of entertainment, and a lot of queer people are in entertainment, right? Like it's like
Yeah.
music, dance, like theater, the arts, like that's not straight people. That's
Hello,
not gay.
Disney.
Yeah, that's plenty of gay people. That's lots of gay people. So when we have like a lot of like entertainment stuff here and like queer spaces and like things to do and all like so like nightlife for sure, right? Like bars and things like that, but also just like a ton of like opportunities that are like to do things with families and with kids and different things. Like there's like a it's also a space that's like Florida is gorgeous. It's like we have like crazy weather, but like
Yeah.
honestly, climate change is real and so does everywhere. So it's like you're not going to live anywhere at this point now where there not is it some kind of like there wildfires, horrible wildfires all through like California. There's like hurricane went up and went in through Asheville, North Carolina. Like there's like like
It's pick your place. I mean, I really think at this point it's really just Ohio and Pennsylvania, maybe.
yeah, maybe for now, like, fingers crossed.
Right.
So it's like there's things everywhere, and so that's a thing. It's like Florida has this reputation because of the way it's been like portrayed specifically in the media, for one, right? And some of that is like our sunshine laws, which means like unlike other places, as soon as something wacky or weird or like a Florida man thing happens here, the news gets to immediately put that on. Whereas other places, there's a buffer in between where it doesn't immediately get. So the same kind of shit is happening other places. It just gets
Mm.
immediately put into like the news cycle here. That's one. The other thing is we have horrible government, but also I would say
Right.
so does America now. So that's like its own thing. But we have gorgeous opportunities to do things with like nature that like you cannot get anywhere else. Like literally this spring, you could go down the road to look at like hundreds of manatees just swimming in the
Mm.
springs, and that's free to do. Like that's something you can like go and do this kind of stuff. There's like We have the best food. My wife is such a foodie. She used to work for Eater New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she moved down here and she is like, now she's like evangelizing to everybody. She's like, the food scene here is incredible. We have like Michelin star places, and these aren't places necessarily out at the parks. It's small, like local places that are literally down the street that you can go and eat like the best meal of your life here. So we have great food, we have great entertainment, we have beautiful, gorgeous weather, we have like all kinds of outdoor stuff. You can do nightlife stuff, you can do stuff with families. Like it's like an all-inclusive place. And like for right now, anyway, like Orlando's a blue hub. Like we're a blue spot in a red state. So
Yeah.
anyway, if anybody needs any like further like encouragement, I'm always trying to get people to come be here that are cool and queer.
At the very least, you've sold me on the Orlando part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird. It just Florida to me is always, besides the Taylor Swift song.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Yes, but we all watch it every year at election time. I mean, every 4 years at election time to see, the madness that is Florida and the kind of crazy diversity and how things swing and how varied it is. But like many places, it just seems to um, I don't know, you can speak to this. It just seems to have increased over the years and it's changed over the years. I
Yeah.
saw DeSantis was on yesterday talking about wanting to create his own Doge department for the state of Florida, talking about cleaning up the corruption that's been existing for so many years. And I watched a woman yesterday and said, Republicans have been in charge for the last 24. So there you go.
This is the thing about Ron DeSantis here in Florida. Even Floridians don't like him. Like I was just like, it's like one of those things where like even the Republicans here don't like him. Like you like go around and like see bumper stickers on cars. I was saying to my wife, I was like, people are like embarrassed by that man here. Like he's
Wow.
even the Republicans are like he's a moron, and like I don't care what a Republican thinks, but I was like that's telling. Who is like we've had such an influx of people coming down here like during the peak pandemic.
Mm.
Florida's government opened up spaces here before many other places were open. And so they kind of like the government like encouraged these like types of people who were like incredibly radically conservative with money with these kind of crazy ideals to like move down here to like live because they're like you don't have to like abide by these crazy rules, you can just go out and do whatever, COVID isn't real. And then these people move down here and then it's like we're like our state also is like every time there's like an election, it's really hard to like have conversations with people because we're super gerrymandered. So it's like everybody's like, go out and vote. And it's like, you don't understand. People are trying to. And they're like, it's like really made into a point where it's like, they've made it so you can't be like succeed or do these kinds of things here. It's like very
Sure.
tough. And like, so like cost of living and how things are now from all these people coming in and just like purchasing up all the property who they're not even like, like it's a crazy situation where it's deeply unfair. And I think constantly we're told, like, why don't you just leave and move somewhere else? And first of all, where? And second of all, that's like such a place of privilege to be like, you can uproot yourself and your family and go somewhere else. Like, you have to have money and a job and support to be able to do all this stuff. People
Yeah,
can't just do that.
100%.
Yeah. But anyway, I love Florida. I think there's like with many things, there's plenty of things wrong here too. I'll be the first to say that. But it's something where I'm like, I also think there's like such community support here and people who really want things to change and to work on stuff. And that's important to me.
Well, and I wouldn't even have brought this up except it is something you use in your fiction it is a particular, it's almost like another character, right?
Absolutely.
You really flesh out your world and it's so atmospheric. One of the great things is Cherry works in this pet store. I loved this whole environment of the pet store. I loved her friends. Darcy
Yeah.
is such a great character.
Yeah.
And just that world that you created, it's just such a rich other place, that was just like, and just felt so real again, because it is this whole time in somebody's life where like 28 to me is you've been out of school long enough, whether it was just high school or college, that you feel like you start to be figuring out what your shit is,
Yeah.
but you don't quite have it together yet. Like I've always felt like I don't think people really start to figure it out until their mid 30s.
Totally.
And I think like you hit 40 and you're like, okay, I'm in a stride now, which only sucks because you're like, God damn it, I can't do all the things I wanted to do because I don't have the energy or like everything hurts. So, but I really do believe that. And I think she is very typical that way. They all are very typical that way.
Yeah. It was really important to me also because I was like, that was one thing I knew I was going to do. I was like, she has to have a job where she's making some kind of wage because like clowning obviously isn't something she can just do and like be able to
Yeah.
live and like pay rent or something. But then I was also like, that's so much of like the kind of job economy and situation here. It's like you're working maybe one job, but you're probably working two or three in order to just like be able to do things. And what does it mean to like have to work all these kinds of jobs to be able to support making art, but then you're tired and you're like, I'm so worn out from having to like do these things to like, and so I was like, I was like, capitalism is like a big part of this book because I was like, that's like what it's
Yeah.
like to be like a working artist is like having to do a bunch of different things to try and make it so you can just live, like a place to live or like
Yeah.
money to eat. And I was like, and also it becomes like a place where like you meet like friends and like those are people you know, and it's like becomes its own like kind of like community. And like to me I was like a pet store, especially like with like different kinds of pets, is like so specifically Central Florida. We have like a lot of different kinds of like exotic animals or like people with pets and like different things. And it also became like a little bit of a bit for me because I love the idea of it being like aquarium select 3, but there's not like an aquarium select like
No,
ridge. Like I was just like, that's so
exactly.
funny.
Like we're the first two.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that place in and of itself is a total sitcom waiting to happen
Yeah, I had
with
fun with
those
those
characters.
people.
All right, before we leave, I have to read you this quote from your book, and then I have to also put on my glasses because hi, blind. Bear with me one moment. Okay, I'm going to read you this part of the book, and then my question for you is this. It says this quote: "There's a yellow post-it note stuck to my dashboard. I put it there almost 5 years ago after an especially hard week of work, a week when everything that can possibly go wrong had gone horribly, terribly awry. My brother dead, no money, no real relationship, no gigs in sight. What do you want to be remembered for?" Now, Cherry says, "I want to be remembered for making someone laugh, for them to fucking feel it right in their guts, even if they don't want to." So my question for you is,
Yeah.
what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, this is such a good question. I think a few different things. I think if you'd asked me, and this is like maybe my favorite thing about being a person, is like I think our answers can change all the time.
Mm,
I think if you'd asked me even like 10 years ago, I would have been like, I want to be remembered as like a writer who's like established and made their mark. But I think now where I am as a person, I want to be remembered as somebody who like was an important part of a community and like brought a lot of joy and care to the people around her. Like that's what I think I really would want is for people to remember me as like a bright light and like somebody who really cared about like being part of things and being part of things with other people. I think that's what I'd say now. Check in with me again in another 10 and see what I say then.
exactly. But I love that. And I think it goes back to, we've bookended our whole conversation because I feel like that's how you come off. You come off as a bright light and someone. So that's what you said.
That's nice. Thank you.
But I would check back in 10 years and then you might be just completely cynical and be like,
Yeah,
I want to
exactly.
be remembered for making money. Well, this has been so lovely. It was such a pleasure to sit down with you. I'm really excited. Please, everyone, get the book, buy independent if you can, but and check out her other books as well. You're just a joy,
Thank
and
you.
congratulations on all of this. I feel like I should be wearing a red clown nose on my face right now, but
You are in your heart, and that's all that matters.
yes,
Yes.
yes.